working on something with every spare moment, to be very laser focused on making something the best you can possibly make it for around about 3 years in a row. I had a ping to my phone. I thought it was going to be a text from a friend, or it was a payment receipt, and somebody had purchased the course. First thing I did was, hug my partner, tears streaming down my face.
Welcome to Corporate Warrior, the podcast that brings you the best advice on how to improve your health, optimize performance, and maximize productivity. With your host, Lawrence Neal.
This episode is brought to you by ARX, the most innovative, efficient, and effective all-in-one exercise machines I've ever seen. I was really impressed with my ARX workout. The intensity and adaptive resistance was unlike anything I've ever experienced. I love how the machine enables you to increase the negative load to fatigue target muscles more quickly, and I love how the workouts are effortlessly quantified. The software tracks maximum force output, rate of work, total amount of work done, and more in front of you on screen, allowing you to compete with your previous performance to give you and your clients real-time motivation. The ARX uses a computer-controlled motor to give you the exact amount of resistance your clients need 100% of the time. This means that the resistance can never become dangerous, is intuitive and simple to use, and can provide you with all the results you and your clients are looking for in a fraction of the time. ARX is highly effective and efficient in delivering all of the benefits of exercise, including increased strength, muscle mass, cardiovascular conditioning, bone mineral density, and injury recovery. As well as being utilized by many high-intensity training trainers to deliver highly effective and efficient workouts to their clients, ARX comes highly recommended by world-class trainers and brands, including Bulletproof, Tony Robbins, and Ben Greenfield Fitness. To find out more about ARX and how you can get $1,000 off software licensing when you place an order, that's right guys, $1,000 off, please go to arxfit.com and mention Corporate Warrior in the How Did You Hear About Us field. So again, to get $1,000 off software licensing when you order, head on over to arxfit.com and enter Corporate Warrior in the How Did You Hear About Us field. Hi guys, I am Lawrence Neal and welcome to another episode of Corporate Warrior, the #1 podcast for high intensity training and the podcast that teaches you how to optimize your high intensity strength training protocol and your HIT business to help you achieve your health, fitness and business goals. My former guests include people like health and fitness giants like Rob Wolf and Mark Sisson, high-intensity training specialists like Dr. Doug McGuff, Skylar Tanner and Drew Bay, through to highly successful business owners like Noah Kagan, Luke Carlson, Keith Norris, and many, many more. My next guest is Simon Shawcross, who you know well and joins me for a part 3. Simon is one of the UK's leading high-intensity training personal trainers, co-author of several health and well-being related books, and founder of HITuni.com, the world's leading e-learning course provider specializing in high-intensity training. If you are interested in creating a high-intensity training business and learning more about HITuni.com, you will love this episode. We cover the HITuni.com journey and Simon's first ever sale, which was very emotional indeed. What you get out of completing a HITuni course over and above other personal training courses. How to market your business effectively, and much, much more. As most of you know, I bought the HITuni course myself, but I'm yet to complete it. And that is quite embarrassing because I did actually purchase the course many moons ago. And Simon has a very, very high completion rate on his courses. So I am one of the very few. And the only reason I didn't complete it is because, as many of you know, I decided not to pursue a personal training and coaching business and instead decided to triple down on this podcast, which I think was the right decision. However, I am looking to potentially open up other services. And with that in mind, I have committed to Simon that I will be completing the course as soon as possible. And as this is my 100th podcast episode, I've decided to celebrate by collaborating with Simon and offering you guys a exclusive time-limited 15% discount on all HITuni courses. It's available for 1 week only and will expire after the 7th of December, so get in quickly. Maybe your partner or mum or fill-in-the-blank friend can buy it for you for Christmas, who knows. To get your 15% discount, select the course you want, enter the coupon code CW100, so that's CW100. Select the course and enter CW100 for 15% discount. And I think that would make for a lovely Christmas present for yourself, or from a close friend or family member. For all of the show notes and links for this episode and all episodes, please go to the usual place, which is corporatewarrior.org. And don't forget to hang around at the end of this episode for your free gift. And now I give you Simon Shawcross. Simon, welcome to the show.
Lawrence, great to be back.
Always a pleasure. How's it going?
Everything's going really well. Life is busy. I just come fresh to you from having done a set of pull-ups.
Boom.
So I'm feeling pumped and excited to talk to you now. What's happening for me a little bit with the training at the moment is because I've got a young 15-month-old daughter. What I'm finding is I don't have time to do workouts as such. So what I have to do is grab whatever moment to do a 1.5-minute set, but I can. My workouts are kind of split up over the day. So it's a slightly different approach, but it's something that works if you've got young children.
Good stuff. And you've been hustling a lot lately. You know, I'm just seeing awesome content from your blog as well. So you've clearly been incredibly busy lately, not only looking after your little one, but also creating lots of great content.
Yes. So the first year of her life, we were really focused on, enjoying that year. And now I am able to be back in a place where I've got a balance between creating content and putting stuff out there through HITuni and having that beautiful balance of looking after my daughter as well. So it's great to be in that space.
Nice. I'm envious because I'm always trying to come up with good content myself. And so I see your blog posts and I'm always like, I need to up my game. So it's good. It kind of motivates me.
Awesome. That's what I said to you. I was writing something somewhere the other day saying, there need to be a lot of voices for this type of exercise. Writing in different ways, explaining, exploring, putting this information out there, audio, video, written word. This stuff needs to be out there from as many sources as possible. So if that can help to be an inspiration for you and for other people, I'm over the moon.
Awesome. Yeah, you remind me. I was interviewed by the guys at NorCal Strength Studio recently, and one of the guys asked me, I think it was Oliver, asked me, how do we make high intensity training big? And he didn't like the fact that everyone who was promoting HIT was trying to add their own spin on it and change it and kind of moving away from the foundations in order to differentiate their business. And I at the time, I don't think I gave a great answer, but having thought about that for a while, I just think it's exactly what you're saying. It's more people creating some kind of business that's related to high intensity training. That's how you're going to get, or how we're going to get this mode of exercise really, really popular, because that's the world we live in. It's a very capitalist world where I think it requires that kind of collective entrepreneurial spirit to push forward.
Yes, and there are lots of sort of approaches that can fall under the umbrella of high intensity training.
Yeah.
And I think it almost intuitively, some people are going to be drawn to one end of the spectrum, others are going to be drawn toward the other end of the spectrum, and there's perhaps a path pretty much in the middle. But it doesn't really matter which you take, so long as it works for you personally. And from my perspective, the key things about high intensity training are its efficiency and its safety. That's the differentiating factors to me. And for me, I would want to provide a service which put those front and center. So you have the effectiveness, the efficiency, and the safety as your overarching umbrella. And, also different people are going to respond a little bit to different ends of the spectrum. So, somebody might absolutely flourish with a full body routine of 8 to 10 exercises 3 times a week. At the other end of the spectrum, somebody might, do far better on a 5 exercise once a week routine. And, if you're incapable or a particular individual is incapable, perhaps initially, of getting it done in one set, you might have to do 2 for a while, maybe with the goal being to draw it down to one, properly applied intense sets of momentary muscular failure. But I don't think there should be an exclusive and excluding attitude. There needs to be an inclusive attitude, and to draw as many people toward this style of exercise as possible, because this is something that you can do when you're 14, 15, and equally you can do when you're 90 years old. And I don't know of any other approach to sort of formal approach to exercise that can do that as safely and effectively.
Neither do I, and completely in agreement with you. Okay, so I want to talk about the HITuni journey. The building of your business, which is going from strength to strength, and is really great to see. Tell me about the moment when you had the HITuni idea.
So that would have been sort of along the kind of time after I co-authored a book called The One Diet, and we're exploring new challenges, so new ways to press myself forward. And I'd been a personal trainer since 1999, 2000, that time. And certainly in the UK over those years, I had a sense of being kind of on my own. And it's really cool now, by the way, to see on Facebook, there's little enclaves dotted around the UK where people are doing this. And, perhaps it's, there were these individuals around or other individuals all along, but prior to like the accessibility of the internet, you just weren't aware of them, say back in, 2004. So it's awesome to see that now, but it was thinking of a way to get this message to a wider audience. It's great working. It was certainly an awesome experience working with individuals as a personal trainer, but I wanted to impact the culture more. So to be able to spread the message of high intensity training to a far wider audience. And that was the thought process behind creating HITuni. What would it be that would help this get to a wider audience? And the way to doing that is to get to, or one of the ways to do that is to get to people who want to teach this to others. So then you will have people here, there, and everywhere, from India to Australia, the US, Canada, UK, Spain, all little enclaves of people who are influencing the world around them, the area around their catchment area, their internet reach, and promoting and teaching this kind of exercise, which means you're going to have a much more positive impact on as many people as possible.
Was there any particular aha moment where you were sat down somewhere or doing something where you were like, the concept kind of just came into your head, or was it more of over time the idea kind of evolved?
It was an evolution. It was something that happened over time. It was looking at the internet and thinking about how that could best be used alongside of the thought process I was just talking about just now. How can I translate the skill sets that we have to using the internet to get this message out there? And, one of the ideas was to do a course where you're just being the personal trainer effectively and teaching other individuals who want to learn how to train themselves in high intensity training. And that's something that we did end up doing through HITuni, because we got the DIY course, which is aimed at individuals. But that wasn't the first course. That was one that came after. What we decided to do was to focus on the trainers for the reasons I just said. They are the people who are going to have a greater impact on spreading the message of this type of exercise. And at the time, there really wasn't anything for trainers as a resource in terms of a really well applied, delivered online course that's accessible in all those different parts of the world that I mentioned. It doesn't matter where you are, you can learn about this type of exercise.
Do you want to just, you've obviously covered it a little bit there, but do you want to just recap what HITuni is, the service that you provide?
Sure. So HITuni is a online high intensity training certification education body, focused primarily on training trainers and delivering information, knowledge, and skill sets to people who want to be trainers. Now, these can be people who are already personal trainers and now want to translate their skill set to high intensity training, specifically add another sort of arrow to their skill set, as it were, and people who are not trainers already, who've just gone, I love this type of exercise and I want to be able to coach others, to train others effectively in a high intensity training manner. So primarily our three main courses, CPD, personal trainer, and the Master Trainers course, are aimed for people who want to train and teach others. And we cover everything in those courses, in the PT and Masters course, from anatomy and physiology, from the impact of the exercise on the body at a biological level, all the way through to application of exercise, techniques, demonstrations, how to perform the exercises safely, coaching, how to market yourself in terms of the master's course, and so on. And then the other course we do have, which I referred to briefly before, is for individuals, for people who might just want to dip their toe in and learn to do it for themselves, or maybe do want to become personal trainers in the long term, but they're not there yet. They want to experience how to perform this type of exercise for themselves. So we have that one course, the DIY HIT course, for individuals too. And we're really about spreading the message of high intensity resistance training, high intensity training as we know it, to the world, to as broad a number of people as possible. There's loud voices for lots of different types of exercise out there, and I think it's really important that this niche gets an opportunity to flourish and grow. So
some time ago, before I left the beautiful city of London to move to Galway in Ireland, we had a coffee. I think it was our final coffee together. Not our last, but the final one certainly in London whilst I was living there. We were talking about HITuni and how the business started, and you told me about the moment you made the first sale, which I think for anyone who's starting an online business, or anyone who's an entrepreneur for that matter, it's a huge moment, and it gives you a lot of self-belief and so on. So do you want to just talk about that moment? Because I just think it's a really nice memory.
Sure. And to understand the reaction, it's important to understand the process that occurred prior to getting to that place. So imagine, if you will, working on something with every spare moment of your time, organizing your life around this project that you're working on, sacrificing, being able to go out, being able to do things, some social time, to be very laser focused on making something the best you can possibly make it. And then imagine doing that for around about 3 years in a row. And, I'm not going to pretend that during that period of time, my life was in perfect harmony and balance, because I think sometimes to make something happen in that way, you are going to push yourself a little bit out of balance to make something worthwhile come to fruition. So all I'm looking to say is it was 3 years of very challenging work. And on, I think a couple of days after we'd launched the course, and, it was very, very new, for the first time in a while, we were able to go out and meet up with a friend and just go out and enjoy some food. And I think it was, I can't recall precisely, but I think it was 2 days after we'd hit the go live button on the site and the payment process, and everything was set as we thought. We tested it ourselves, but we had no proof externally that something was going to happen. So we were out with this friend, and we were engaging in conversation, and as best I possibly could, I was being in the now moment, but there was an element of my brain that was going, when will a sale happen? When is this process going to start? And patience is something I've really learned when working at anything important. So, I wasn't obsessing about it, but it was in the back of my mind. And obviously we've got everything set up to our phones nowadays, and even back then when the courses came first out, and I had a ping to my phone. I thought it was going to be a text from a friend or an email coming in, and I looked down and it was a payment receipt, and somebody had purchased the course. And I looked down almost in disbelief at my phone, just almost in shock, and a huge amount of probably pent up emotions rushed to the surface. And we were sat in a Chinese restaurant, and first thing I did was hug my partner and just wow, we made the first. That was incredible, and there were literally tears streaming down my face. It was sort of a validation, a verification of, yes, this works at a purely pragmatic level. The payment processor syncs with the website. All the little bits of Lego are cohesive and work. And B, a validation of somebody externally has looked at your 3 years of behind the scenes labor and gone, that looks good, I'll have that. And emotionally, that was immensely fulfilling. And I, people around us in the Chinese restaurant might have probably felt, what the hell's going on with that group? But, personally, I was in, tears coming down my face of joy. It was an amazing moment. Just one of those, you have sort of a handful of moments in your life. That's one that will certainly always be in that sort of top 10 list. It had a huge impact on me emotionally, personally, and I know it did on my partner as well. Emotionally, personally, just a fantastic moment and a real coming together of 3-4 years of work.
How did your guests react?
They were a little bit nonplussed. I mean, they knew we'd been doing this, but I don't think they knew to the extent we dedicated ourselves to this. I think it was like, sometimes until people see something, even when they see it, a lot of people outside of a thing can't grasp or appreciate quite what's gone into it. And I certainly, wouldn't be one for going around sort of saying, oh, you must understand how much we put into this. So I think they were a little bit nonplussed about this sort of perhaps potentially what they would view as an extreme emotional reaction. But they were delighted for us. And, the next round of drinks was bought for us. And it was a lovely moment.
No, that's cool. What was the course that was sold? I think you told me, was it the
PT? Yeah. Okay. Personal trainer course. So it was the main course we were selling at that time. We hadn't released the master's course at that point. So the PT was the gold standard course we'd released then. And we saw that sale and it was just had a huge impact. And it obviously really important because that's what we're in the business of doing. So it needed to happen.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because you're kind of thinking to yourself, certainly if you've not done a business like this before, is someone prepared to part with that amount of money for something on the internet? They're not actually having a conversation with anyone beforehand. Like, how realistic is that? So when it happens, I can imagine that's quite an awesome experience because obviously they're getting value that exceeds that investment from that. But it's still sometimes quite hard to believe someone would part with money like that. And just on that, do you notice that with your business, it's rare that you get people just come to the site and then buy a course? They will see the courses and then they will mull it over for a certain period of time. Like, what sort of trends do you see there?
It's not always easy, and I'm not the most technically driven person in this to know that journey that a person takes on our website and so on. As I understand it, it does happen. So there will be somebody we're not aware of, haven't seen before, out of the blue, does purchase. And then what happens likely far more often is it's somebody who's emailed, made contact, I might have had a Skype conversation with, because this is something else that I do think is important, and something that we focus on at HITuni is there are people. We were just talking about, it being an online business and people purchasing, investing in something that is an intangible product. Well, for me, it's very important that people have access to the people behind that product. They need to me, it's important that they can see that there are people behind this working, interacting. You've got a question, it can get answered. So I make myself available so that there can be a dialogue as well. So what happens is what my intuition, and backed up with a little bit of what I've been told, tells me is that people will be aware of us, and they'll get interested in my email once, and then after a period of several weeks, or maybe slightly longer than that, a purchase will be made. And I think it's the individual getting to see what it is we do provide, and seeing it multiple times, and then realizing, how effective and how good or great a course it is, and deciding, that's what I'm going to do. That's what I want to do.
Cool. Few more questions just on the HITuni kind of journey, and then we'll get into some of the questions that were submitted. As you described there, you spent a good 2 or 3 years spending hours and hours building this awesome collection of content. What kept you going during that time, like in terms of motivation to see that through?
This became priority number one. It simply became, this is happening. And a dedication to adhering to that. At no point did it feel like a sacrifice, despite any challenges, hardships, or whatever that came with it. It always was something that we wanted to achieve and reach as a goal, as an outcome, as an end point, and to create and nurture and keep alive. So what kept me going personally would be seeing it coming together, would be, the little things that I might have started writing as a small script or jotting down in a notepad 6 months ago, seeing the end filming of that being edited, being turned into a part of the end product, and having the cool graphics added to it, and seeing all that stuff coming together would have certainly been something that would have kept me going on that journey. But the outcome was always sort of there, front and center, as a carrot dangling ahead, or whatever way you want to put it. There was that thing that needed to be achieved in my mind.
Looking back, what would you have done differently of starting over, if anything?
Okay. What would I have done differently? I mean, in many ways, in many elements of this, I was completely unaware of the time frame some of this stuff would take, particularly when it comes down to filming and video editing. I just had, I had a glimpse, I had a sense of it before, but prior to filming this much footage and having this much footage edited and worked on, and then having to do sort of voiceover dubs on stuff and all of that kind of stuff, I really didn't know. So what I thought at the very beginning might have been a year to do was 3 years. And that was simply because I was naive to the technicality behind creating a really good course. So if I could go back again, it would be to temper my expectations of time frame to make them more realistic. And then perhaps knowing that, I would have built in a little bit more downtime, relaxed time into the process, because I always felt it was just around the corner. So it was always like sort of one more push to keep going. And then you find, you get to the end of that push and, there's another one more push and another one more push to do. But at the time I didn't know that. So if I could go back and sort of tap myself on the shoulder at that time and say, this is going to take 3 years of your life. Take a day off a week to just do something completely different. And I think that would have managed my energy levels on the whole better throughout, because I hadn't realized how hard I was. When you're in the moment, you don't necessarily realize it, and it's quite challenging to extract yourself from there unless you can step back and take that big picture view. So that's something I'd certainly go back and say to myself is going to be a little bit longer than you think it's going to be, and take a little bit of time to enjoy as you go through the journey.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I've been watching a lot of Gary Vaynerchuk's content lately, and he's big on patience. So he's, for those listening, Gary Vaynerchuk's a very successful American entrepreneur, but he's really spending a lot of time building a personal brand and talking about what it really means to become a successful entrepreneur. And a big part of it is patience. And sometimes I need to remind myself to be patient. In fact, a lot of the time, this stuff just doesn't happen overnight. When you're trying to start anything, you've got to expect that it's going to take you 5 to 10 years to really get somewhere. Maybe it'll take you 2-3 years, maybe longer, just to start making an income. So I think it's important to look at it like that, but realize that even if it takes that long, as long as you start now, you've got plenty of time, for most of us anyway.
But it's like that, by the time you're aware of an overnight success, they've put in 10 years legwork to get to that place.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the issue. Like, we have this, is it survivorship bias, if I'm using that correctly? Like, we see all of these, actually, I think that's probably the wrong definition to use, but we see all these highlights on social media and in magazines and the media about these businesses that seem to have, like you say, be overnight successes, when actually there's been 10 failures prior to that success, or like you say, 10 years of hard work, or fill in the blank. So yeah. What have you got in terms of courses, and what's in the pipe for HITuni in the next 6 to 12 months?
Right now, I'm really focused on continually putting out really good content via the blog, so that there is more information out there about high intensity training and the peripheral stuff around high intensity training, other well-being, wellness, and fitness related articles and items. So my focus is on expanding that side. So there's a lot more content for people to delve into and continually dip their toes into. Also, over the next 6 months, there's going to be I'm working on restructuring elements of the courses, and that's continually updated. So this is a good point to mention. When somebody purchases a course, they're not purchasing something solid, stuck in time. They will always have that access to whatever is being updated behind the scenes. So when they log into the platform next time, there might be elements that have changed from the previous time, the stuff that's been added to it, new video, new written content, and so on. So it's not, when you purchase a HITuni course, it's not something, stuck from 2015. It's something that every year is changing, and you always get that new thing. So that's something that's always going on behind the scenes, but I'm doing quite a lot, or we are doing quite a lot on that at the moment. So that's really the focus. And from my perspective of the stuff that I do, between doing those two things, that's a lot of time kind of taken up already. There's a few other things we're working on for the new year that'll be be good. I'm not ready to mention those particular things yet, but they're kind of exciting things that perhaps if we chat again, when they're in fruition, that would be a fun thing to do.
Cool. Sounds good. And how have you you mentioned, earlier, I think probably before we started recording, about managing time. Actually, no, you did mention at the start, how you manage your time with your daughter. So talk us through, like, how do you manage your day at the moment in terms of like being effective and working on your business, and then also finding time for family as well? Like, how do you currently manage that?
Okay. So this is one of those things where weekends are sacred, pretty much. It's like that's family time. That's time when we're all together and we're going out for walks, we're engaging, we're reading together, we're playing together, we're having fun. And that's kind of sacrosanct now. And this was a lesson that does go back to those early days of HITuni that I was talking about, and certainly it was obviously prior to having a little one. So there's a big dynamic difference. But learning that lesson, especially now with a little bit more maturity, to take that time, and obviously especially with a beautiful daughter around as well. So there's that element.
That's a good rule, that.
Yeah, and then in terms of the week time, evening times. So she goes to nursery. So she has 9 to 5 at the nursery, which gives time during the day where we can be completely focused on HITuni. So there isn't any. I think you'll learn this when you have kids, if that's something you want to do, is that when they're around, you can't work, because especially, I don't know what happens later on, but at this age, even if they're in another room with their mum and you hear like a scream or a crying sound, your awareness goes from whatever you're doing to that. So it is exceptionally challenging to try and focus. So having the nursery thing is awesome, which means that, my focus of attention during the working day is exclusively on that. And then come evening time, it's family time, it's walk time with baby and the dog. It's doing all those stuff that, make life really worth living as well. And got to have those both sides of the picture ultimately. So it's not that big of a challenge. It is something else, being more disciplined as well. So in terms of our nutrition, in terms of cooking, in terms of the division of who does what in the household, all of that is, becomes more important and more seamless. It needs to become more seamless. And, sometimes if my partner's energy is low, I need to step up to the plate. Sometimes if her energy is low, if my energy is low, she needs to step up to the plate. And it certainly brings a greater awareness, I think, into the relationship about the dynamics of who's feeling what at what time, and an importance for the awareness of that. So working with kids, it's not that difficult when nursery's in place, because there's a set period of time every day where you don't have to think about it. And I tell you what, by the time it gets around to 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, my mind starts going, I wonder how she's doing. I feel like I really miss it. It's only been like 7 hours, but I'm like, I really miss her. I wonder what she's been doing. I wonder what she's doing. And the coolest thing at the end of the day is walking into that nursery, into the nursery room, and like, my favorite thing, I know it's my partner's too, is if she's not aware of you and you can walk in there and just see her doing whatever she's doing and interacting with the other kids before she clocks you. Yeah. It's beautiful to see that. And then like, you'll just see her turn and look at you, and she's like hands up in the air and like walking straight over to you. Amazing sensation. And that's something else that makes all this, you talked about motivation before. Well, having a daughter is just like, you don't need any external motivation, and that just like ramps it back up again in you. It's like, you're doing it for your family. So everything you do is for your family as well.
Yeah, I've heard a few entrepreneurs say, want to get motivated? Have kids.
Yeah, it certainly add a new challenge to your life as well. Because one thing I look back at prior to children, is that, how selfish you can be with your time. Yeah. Like, That's awesome. And I'd say anybody who doesn't have kids, who plans on having kids, is really, really, really enjoy that. Really enjoy being able to do whatever you want, whenever you want, now while you can, because you're going to need to adapt that process, how you are with that after you have kids, which is cool, which is really good. It's just a different phase of life.
Cool.
I hope that answers your question. I think, you do need to have outside help if you're running a business. Because you need times when you can focus exclusively on the business, and just as importantly, you need times when you can focus exclusively on your family. And that, to me, that means you need outside help, whether that's family members, a nursery, a nurse, whatever. It's critical, I'd say.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. So talking about answering some of these questions submitted by listeners, which are great questions, actually.
Cool. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, wanted to kick off with this one about the accreditation in terms of how it's recognized. Do you want to just talk about that a little bit?
So I would say with accreditation, that's an interesting topic. There are, different bodies around the world who sort of are seen as the qualification for the general personal trainer in that geographic area, and then they'll sort of do accreditation for other courses that are kind of related to what they do. Now, high intensity training as such is perhaps, it's a little bit of a sidestep, a little bit of a leap outside the paradigm of what's perceived as typical exercise, which puts us in a more unique position in that respect. So what we are focused on is creating the best courses in high intensity training and creating the best trainers in high intensity resistance training, putting those people out there so we are confident in their skills and they are confident in their skills. And to me, and to our clients, to the people who become our trainers, that tends to be the most important thing, is that they have this toolbox in HITuni that covers, the broad spectrum of high intensity training. It covers the umbrella of approaches to high intensity, what is subsumed under high intensity training. It has all the exercises, the demonstrations, the techniques, different things you can do with it, how to work with clients. And it's the skills and the tool sets that are most important to the people who take our courses. And it's being able to go out there into the world with confidence as a high intensity trainer. If you're not particularly interested, especially in high intensity training, there are hundreds of personal training courses out there. This, and it's a line we kind of put in the sand, is specifically about excellence in high intensity training education.
Yeah, well said. And I can only imagine it must be kind of frustrating, but to not always get, I guess, recognized by some of these older, let's say, somewhat antiquated bodies. But like you say, people shouldn't necessarily purchase the course for recognized accreditation, but more for the tools and things they will learn that will then help them build their business and become better.
I think that's a point that I've had said to me by people who have taken the course and are HITuni trainers. There was a lovely guy who said to me, I asked Doug McGuff, should I take your course? And I think Doug's response to this chap was, don't do it if you just want a piece of paper. Do it because you want the information and the learning process that's in that course. So it's a far more selfish, knowledge-driven reason to do the course than saying, I want a bit of paper.
Do you know what? That being said, just looking at it from a layman perspective and from when trainers approach their clients who will have no idea a lot of the time what is considered a official personal training qualification, what is not. To say you've got a HITuni or you're HITuni accredited is still going to have a lot of clout in that context. It's still going to
and I think what would be really beneficial in talking about that respect is that, if you say as a trainer you're HITuni accredited, and then the client goes and looks up HITuni, they're going to see the quality of education, the quality of information that we release, through the blog and through the video channel and so on. And I think that will certainly help to give clients a confidence, that what you're talking about and how to do it. And that's something that's really important to me is our trainers, the people who are taking our certification, need to film themselves in a live dynamic of training an individual through a workout, and then they need to send that to us. And that's something that we spend a lot of time reviewing the technique they're using, reviewing their coaching skills, their language skills, their motivational skills as a trainer. And that's something that we give very broad and focused feedback on. And if the person who's sent that video across isn't quite there yet, they will need to do it again, because that is really critical to us, is that there is that quality in the HITuni trainers that are out there, that there is that ability. It's like, if you went to a garage, a Rolls-Royce garage, you would expect the engineers, no matter where in the world you went, if it was a Rolls-Royce branded garage, to be excellent at dealing with those cars. And that's what I want people's experience as a client of a trainer to be, is like, this guy's HITuni certified. The standard of application is excellent. Different people have different personalities, characteristics, and ways of expressing themselves. And so every trainer is going to have an element of uniqueness to them. And I think that's really important and certainly to be encouraged, because you need to bring, that's how you'll be genuine. That's how you'll attract your clients. You've got to be you doing this stuff. And I think that's absolutely critical. So we don't want, just robots delivering the standard information. We want people who are passionate about this and can deliver this type of training with their personality, with their passion, with the characteristics that make them a strong trainer.
What have you learned from managing and overseeing a certification program so far?
I've learned that there are a lot of passionate people out there who get attracted to high intensity training. It's one of those things, I think, when you become exposed to it and you do a little bit of reading around it, watch a few videos or something, once your mind starts to go click, 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 and the gears click into place, there's a tendency, at least for a lot of the people I'm exposed to become very, very passionate about it. And I think that's something that is superb, because as I was just talking about just now, that passion is what's going to drive your business. That passion is what's going to attract people to you. Even if you happen to work out of a relatively busy gym, people are going to be, in your body language, in the way you're interacting with your clients, people are going to clock that and be like, and they're doing something that appears visually really different from what I'm seeing going on around me. So that's really critical. And I think that passion is awesome. And it's lovely to see that degree of excitement out there. So I've certainly learned that from running a certification business. One thing that sort of continually pleases me, excites me, is also the fact that in general, I find it's a really sort of intelligent, questioning bunch of people as well who are attracted to high intensity training. It's people that I would, really want to interact with anyway. It's people who like peeling back the layers of the onion and get excited about this type of information and this approach to exercise. That's been my experience. I suppose it's from having started as a personal trainer teaching high intensity training to clients back in 99, 2000 when I started doing this, and feeling like I was a single drop in an ocean surrounded by everything else that wasn't HIT in terms of exercise. It's really heartening to see more and more and more of this. And I for sure know this HIT niche is growing and expanding from having been around it this long. It's amazing to see, and it's there's more and more voices out there doing this that are a conduit. You being one of them, Lawrence, doing great work, that are a conduit for more and more little drops in the ocean. It's going to build and build and build. And I think, sort of talking about how to make this more mainstream earlier, it's like focus on the world that you can impact and the world that you have a degree of influence over. And if you focus on that to start off with, that's going to grow, and the influence that an individual has grows. And that's how to make HIT more mainstream and have a greater impact. It's one of those things, again, I'm passionate about happening. It's really important that this information is out there. I consider it's awesome that I'm able to coach my parents in this type of exercise. And if I wasn't around doing this and I wasn't a personal trainer and I didn't know anything about exercise, I would consider my parents so lucky at their age if they happened upon somebody who was doing this type of exercise. Yeah. And I would like that for everybody's parents out there.
Yeah, well said. What does HITuni offer over formal education, for example, a sports science degree?
Wow, you've got a great head start if you've got a sports science degree. That's fantastic. The likelihood is then you really sort of know your background information, your anatomy and physiology, the biology behind all of this, which I think is less sort of controversial in many ways than the application of exercise. So sort of the fundamentals in many ways behind how the body works and responds to exercise is sort of almost, people treat it as a given. Yeah, this is science, this is as it is. When it comes to the application, that's when there tend to be the sort of more disagreements or arguments about protocol and so on and so forth. But I think if you whittle them down at the end of the day, aren't actually as different as often people think their differing approaches are. Needless to say, it gives you a head start. It gives you a massive head start. And what I would say to that person to treat HITuni as is your go-to toolbox where everything HIT is. So it's like your videos, your exercise demonstrations, your coaching stuff. If you're on the master's course, the marketing of your business, it was written, the modules there were written by a marketing professional. The elements of HIT as it relates to science and the human body, specifically high intensity resistance training, all of that stuff, the different techniques, advances, all of that stuff is there within the HITuni courses. And so you've got a great grounding in how the body responds to exercise and how the physiology works. And now you've got in HITuni or a HITuni course, you've got how HIT is applied. And it's something like you can always delve back into, you always dip back into like, how do you apply that particular technique? Or I just wonder what the setup for that exercise is like. And also, what's the latest research on high intensity training, and how can I explain things to my clients about high intensity training? So it's, the clearest way to say it is it's very HIT focused. It's about high intensity training, applying it and coaching and mentoring people in high intensity training specifically.
Yeah, and also just to highlight, a sports science degree is not a prerequisite at all for something like HITuni. Using myself as an example, I just happen to be really into high intensity training and obviously read a fair number of books and interviewed, to this point, a lot of people on the subject. And, then having gone partway through the course myself, I am just kind of adding to that knowledge base, but I already had enough to really grasp a lot of the stuff I'm learning. So I also just don't want people to feel intimidated just because they don't have a sports science degree or something similar in their back pocket. It's just
what's really important so somebody at the other end of the spectrum who's never done this before, if you take the personal trainer course or the master personal trainer course, that starts from the ground level up. So that starts with all that, the biology and science of exercise, anatomy and physiology, joint actions, all of that stuff you would learn otherwise in the sports science course, which is one of the reasons we did the CPD course and the PT and the Masters course. So the CPD course is for people really who have already got a personal training qualification or a sports science background. They know their A&P, they know their biology of exercise, and now they want the specifics of HIIT. Whereas the personal trainer course and the master personal trainer course cover that stuff from the ground on up. So that might impact which of the courses you take. If you've got a background where you're very knowledgeable, that could be somebody with a sports science degree or somebody who's an osteopath, and they work with the body already and have taken a similar A&P type background, versus people who are coming to this fresh without any prior exercise related qualification. Then you would be drawn towards the personal trainer or the master's course, which starts all that stuff from the ground level up.
Yeah, cheers for clarifying that. What does A&P stand for?
Anatomy and physiology.
Okay. What's the difference between HITuni qualifications and the stuff that the Super Slow Guild provided back in the day?
I think, first of all, Ken Hutchins and his work is excellent. As I understand it, the Super Slow Exercise Guild or Super Slow Exercise was first and foremost about protocol attached to specific equipment. So as I understand it, to apply Super Slow, ideally you're using Super Slow branded equipment. That's something that I'd say is very different. At HITuni, one of my goals from the outset is you could have access to the best equipment in the world, and whether you consider that to be, ARCs, or you consider it to be MedX or David or Super Slow Piece, or you're drawn to free weights, or you don't have any of that stuff and you have just a chin-up bar and push-up handles. Our goal with the HITuni courses is no matter what exercise equipment you have accessible to you, we are going to teach you to be able to apply and teach high intensity training effectively. So from the ground level up, it's whatever equipment you have. So you could live 50 miles from the nearest gym and just be working out of your garage with a few bits, or you could be working in a beautiful one-on-one facility with the best equipment in the world. It doesn't matter. To me, it's far more about successful application of the principles behind this type of exercise. And what I want HITuni to do is to give this information in a really interactive, user-friendly way that's very modern and uses the technology that we have today to deliver this information.
And not to mention, I think the Super Slow organization is no more, right? So it's not actually possible to get accredited, is it? I could be wrong.
My understanding is, and this is something I'm not necessarily particularly up on, is that I think there's maybe a Super Slow franchise model that is different, though, from Ken Hutchins, who was the originator of Super Slow Exercise. The two are not related any longer. So whatever that franchise organization is doing, if indeed it still exists, is not related anymore, as I understand it's Ken Hutchins.
Right, okay, yeah. I'm very, very ignorant of that subject, so it's good to get a little bit more clarification.
I hope I got it right, but that's what has happened with that. I think there are probably people out there who are better off, capable of discussing, perhaps people who were in that organization originally.
Yeah, and I did a roundtable, and in the part 2, I know that Ryan and Drew talk about it extensively. So if you want to learn more about that organization there and what happened, and what happened there, then listen to the part 2 of the roundtable, which I'll link to in the show notes. What have you seen in terms of trends among your most successful HITuni graduates?
Drive. So to be successful at this, it's about drive. So what the courses provide you with is knowledge and information, and potentially, but so long as you study diligently, the ability to put this into practice. For people who I see come out and be very successful, are driven. And I would say before they even take the HITuni certification, whichever course they take, they kind of know where they're going. They know what direction they're going, and they know how they're going to make that happen. Or at the very least, they've got building blocks of ideas as to what that end goal is for them. Whether that's, working as a mobile trainer going from door to door, whether that's working out of a regular gym, sort of a Virgin Active or whatever, or whether that's starting their own facility and purchasing equipment from the ground floor up. It doesn't matter. They have a sense of where they want to go, and they're driven to achieve that. And that's not to say they won't change. They might work as a mobile trainer for 2 years and go, right, now I want a facility. But it's like they have this drive, and they have a vision in their mind as to what success to them looks like. And the ones who are, and these are people I think are fantastic to nurture as well, is it's like they want to use the HITuni courses to get them to that place and to help assist them get to that place. And that's what I want. The more trainers I see out there who are super successful, the happier I am with this. And seeing those trainers who start off on the course, and then you see them, and you see them on the Skype interview that we do with them, and you see them in their video, and you can another thing is you can really see when somebody sends that video across, those who are really adept at coaching and instructing and delivering this information effectively to a person who's in front of them, because that's something else that's really important, is having the ability to, so you can have all the most scientific knowledge in the world stuffed inside your head, but when it comes to being a trainer, you need to be able to translate and communicate that to the person in front of you, which is why we place such an emphasis on that communication delivery in the HITuni courses, is because that is critical. And when you see somebody who's taken that on board and is good at that, you kind of know how successful they're going to be when you see it. And then it's great to see them through social media, 3 months later, 6 months later, and they look like they're flying, and they've got clients and they're posting success stories. And it's just awesome to see that, and to have been a part, even if it's a small part of that person's evolution and process, as an individual and as a trainer.
You're motivating the shit out of me, Simon.
It's time, Lawrence. It's time to get that course done, finished, certification off, and I'm looking forward to seeing your video.
What's the quickest? Obviously, you don't want to probably promote speed because you want people to take their time and do it properly. But what's the quickest one can complete your course?
Well, okay, so I'm going to preface this with whatever works for you based on your lifestyle and lifestyle constraints. Okay. So how much a person can dedicate to taking the course in sort of time per day or number of days per week, obviously, is going to impact how quickly you can take the course. I would say that somebody who's motivated to make the time for it, and will take the personal trainer course, can, and let's say they have a little bit of an understanding about exercise as well before they started, can probably finish that in 3 months. But that's somebody who's focused, motivated, dedicated, goes through the modules, ticking things off, knows when they're going to and who they're going to film their video with, and gets all their ducks lined up in a row like that, and gets the job done. So I'd say that's a good goal to aim for. I have had people who've done it quicker. They're exceptions to the rule. And I have had plenty of people who take a little bit longer than that. And it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. One thing I am very keen on happening is that everybody who starts a course completes a course. That's my goal. Now, I'm there to assist people to do that, because, if you've invested in yourself in a HITuni course, I really want you to complete that. And whether it's for your own education, so you can apply HIT for yourself, or it's because you want to be a trainer, it doesn't matter. It's like, I really, really live off seeing people go through and finishing. It's like when that tick box, when I get their final video and we have our final Skype interview and everything's ticked and everything's ticked off that I needed for them to do, or we needed for them to do, and then it's done. That's awesome. And there's another great trainer out there. So yeah, I lost my train of thought there a little bit. What was the question?
No, it was good. It was just about speed of completion. But
so I'd certainly say make it a little bit challenging for yourself would be my advice. So make it realistic, but a little bit challenging. Keep yourself on your toes. Set yourself deadlines, set yourself goals for achievement. Don't let it just drift. Let it become something that you're like, this needs to happen by then, this module by then, this module by then. If you haven't studied A&P before, anatomy and physiology before, maybe schedule a little bit more time, because that's quite an intricate subject to work your way around. And then, so for the PT course, I'd say, really make it a goal to do it in 3 months. If it takes you 6 months, that's fine. But it's keeping the motivation up to do it and get it completed in that time. I would say, to give you the shortest possible answer to that now, is like, do it in 3 to 6 months.
Good stuff. And let's talk a little bit more about the completion rate. People might be aware that online courses have a notoriously low completion rate, but yours don't, which is really interesting. So do you want to just talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, and I think this speaks to the quality of students we do get primarily, is that people generally who start complete the course. And I'd say we have, I'm not going to include, well, there's no point including our DIY course, but, the one that's for individuals learning for themselves, because there's no exam with that. So there's no process of knowing, whether somebody's applying HIT now in their life every week. So if we take the 3 personal training courses, the CPD, the PT, and the Masters, as I understand it, I think our completion rate is up around about 85 to 90%. So 85 to 90% of people who start the course complete the course and get certified ultimately. And I don't know off the top of my head, maybe what the average completion rate of a typical online course
is. Under 20%.
Under 20%. Yeah, so it's massively different. And I would like to think that an element of that comes down to how well we've structured the process, the certification process, the interaction, the live interaction over Skype that we have with people, as well as the entire process and the clarity with which we've designed that process. But I think the key thing has to go, the key thing, as I started out by answering this, has to go to the people who take our courses tend to be highly motivated and really passionate about this subject. And it's awesome to see that process of somebody going through that.
Are you going to be taking on instructors in the future at all?
I saw that question on Facebook, and I think that's a fantastic idea, a great idea. And the person who asked that question, I said he'd be delighted to have a chat with them over this in the new year. I think there's something there worth talking about. so that there will be potentially a geographic element as well at some point, or even a get-together, occasional get-together of HITuni trainers to meet in the flesh, as it were, as well. So that's something certainly worth considering.
Yeah, like because kind of like you've got the resistance exercise conference over in the US, but to have something similar in the UK would be pretty cool, like a strength training seminar or conference like that. Is that perhaps what you're referring to as well?
Yeah, it could be. I'm open to discussing with it. I would certainly want to see what the interest level is like for something like that. So, it's a little bit outside of the model that we have currently, but I would like to see, is that something people are there enough people who are passionate about, bums on seats turning up at the end of the day and engaging with that kind of process? And if there are, that's something I think is a great idea.
Yeah, I do. I think I'm just thinking about it whilst you're talking there, and I think we know how fitness is massive, and there's a ton of personal trainers out there in the UK who are teaching other methods, who I know if they understood the high intensity training we're talking about, that it would be huge for them. I mean, I already know when I talk to personal trainers that aren't really familiar with this, either they're completely defiant and hard to talk about it with, or they're really open and they're really interested and become quite passionate. And so if you were to get a lot of those guys to a conference, you would potentially then have a lot more HITuni customers. So I'm just thinking about it also from a business development point of view. It could be very, very effective.
We're very much sort of focused and keen on getting that kind of exposure to people who are already in the fitness industry, because then we know that they are people who are passionate about exercise, but also they're people who, if they are open to listening to this message, they can be fantastic trainers, fantastic advocates for this type of training. I think that transition is really an interesting one that can happen to somebody who's already in the fitness industry and then becomes exposed to high intensity training with an active mind and says, okay, what is this about? Let me have a little look into this. Does this stack up? Does it make sense to me if I genuinely read around this topic and engage in this topic? Does this make sense to me? Does this make sense ultimately to the kind of people I train? Does this make sense over the long term for the people that I work with and for the longevity of training? Because from my experience, I don't know any other form of exercise with a retention rate like high intensity training. Personal trainers who are successful in the high intensity training niche tend to keep the clients that they get. Let's assume they're a good trainer and they're able to motivate and communicate this type of exercise well. They tend to keep their clients. Why? Because it removes one of the key barriers to entry for exercise, which is time commitment, and reduces that to very much a minimum. If you've only got 20 minutes once a week, you can still get your workout in. If you've got 2 times a week, fantastic too. I mean, you can vary between the two as well if you want. If you have clients, and what that does to me is that opens up the market massively to people who will then exercise. Does that make sense? It's like there are far more people who would exercise if they know their commitment needs to be 20 minutes once or twice a week than if you're sort of perhaps more of a traditional personal trainer who's saying, you've got to be exercising with me 3 or 4 times a week, an hour at a time. Well, there's a very limited niche of people who are going to do that and who have the money to do that as well. I mean,
Yeah, completely agree. And I think a number of the listeners of this show would agree with that entirely. How can trainers attract people that don't want to go to the gym?
That's a really good question. Wow. Okay. So one thing you could do is you could offer
sort of a door-to-door service where you rock up with, some minimal equipment that's easily transportable. Something you could throw in the back of your car, or even, let's say you're working in a city like London or New York, you could jump in the underground or the subway with a big bag of kit, and you could go to people. So that removes that, I've got to go somewhere for the individual. It means you've got to go somewhere, which, you might want to balance up with that something you want to do and whether and how you structure it price wise. So that would be great. That certainly helps remove a barrier to entry for some people. You could do a similar thing, but meet people in parks if you've got fairly good weather where you are. So that helps people train in their own homes. That helps people train in a park that's local to them. And obviously you would be doing something with body weight, maybe dumbbells, maybe resistance bands for some exercises, some time static contraction stuff, and you can mix it up and create a service which could be really cool in terms of the delivery of the exercise protocol and the stimulus, and take it to people's, effectively to their doorsteps.
Nice. We took the TRX, or well, it's not a TRX, but it's my cheap rip-off TRX, to the local. It's like a small group of trees and a little field near where I live. And Ash and I, so my partner and I, took this equipment over there, and we set up our own little gym. We had yoga mats on the floor and push-up handles, and tied the TRX to the tree.
Awesome. And then you're training in nature as well, which is, that's got to be a plus sometimes.
Definitely. What is the most effective advertising tactics that you've seen your high intensity trainers use to get more business?
Success stories. This is something that I see with great trainers all the time. They view every client they have, no matter how challenging that client is, as a success story in the making. And I think that's a critical mindset or focus to have when you're a personal trainer, because at the end of the day, it is about helping that person in front of you achieve the goals that they're capable of. And to do that, you need that kind of perspective. So once you have people and you've gone through that journey with them, and you can show potential new clients, this is what I can do. This is what other regular people have done with me. That's a really great sales technique, because it's sort of where the mouth is. It's like, yes, I can relate to, Mrs. Smith can relate to Joanne, who got, bikini ready in 6 months of you last year, or 3 months of you, by using a high intensity training and sensible nutrition strategies. Mr. Jones, who's tried to exercise and has got aching joints, and then, sees that there's somebody on your site who exercised once or twice a week in a slow, controlled manner, and did have an issue before, doesn't have an issue exercising anymore. It's like, if you can show people you can do it, then they're going to come along to you and be more prepared to invest in your strategy. It's word of mouth as well. Word of mouth is critical. It's like, again, it's the same thing. It's like, if you treat your clients as success stories in the making, they're going to have such a positive impression of your business and their experience of you as a trainer. They will pass that message on to their friends, or at least a subset of clients. One thing I always found as a personal trainer is that there would be some clients who would want to keep this almost a secret to themselves. It's like, this is what I'm doing. I don't want anybody else to know, because I don't want people to know that it's often people who haven't exercised really before in the past and so on. But then you'll have those people who are sort of raving fans of it and want to tell all their friends. And I think that's great when you get, it's fine if somebody wants to keep it private, but as a personal trainer, it's also wonderful when you have those clients who are like, in 20 minutes, sometimes I go once a week, sometimes I go twice a week, this is what he's done for me. And he's helped me with my nutrition, which has made, me look the way I want to look. Fantastic. And when friends start noticing it. And often this will be the case with clients as well. Friends will start noticing the change in their friends before the client themselves will. They'll say, "Are you working out?" The number of times I had that, a client came back sort of really perky the next training session because over the weekend they'd met up with a friend who they hadn't seen for 10 weeks, and their friend was like, "Oh, are you working out now?" And they're like, to have that external feedback when you haven't told anybody initially what you're doing is so satisfying. I know it's satisfying for a client, and then people notice the client and they're more excited about telling other people about what they're doing and why it's unique. And you want to create fans, you want to create people who love the service that you do. And I think that comes down to really genuinely being interested in the individual in front of you and helping them to get to where they need and want to be. And then in many ways your business, in my experience, will flourish based on that almost alone.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I mean, just having spoken with Skylar about this, and obviously Jay Vincent, in terms of growing high intensity training businesses, it does sound like, word of mouth is really, really important. And probably the most important thing is just getting success in terms of the first clients that you manage to get, and then having them spread that message is how you're going to grow. The other thing obviously is location. A lot of the guys who are running shops, they're in great locations. And, I've had this told me multiple times, how, if you're in a position where there's good footfall, and you're in a good location, that you will generate business that way, or at least leads. What else has worked for you and others in terms of bringing new clients through the door? Like, what would be, I'm just thinking of people who don't have necessarily a high intensity training shop, but want to do maybe more remote coaching over Skype or stuff like that. But also, like you were saying about actually visiting people's homes with equipment. So what might be some other tactics?
I think also, I think Facebook pages for your business is going to be really useful as well. What people are going to get from that is this reality. It's like, this is a real person with a real service. And nowadays, Facebook is an excellent way for getting that message across to people. And then if you can get people's friends sort of tagging each other in your service and showing people what you do has worked for them, it's sort of the same thing as I've just been talking about, but online. I think, again, it really comes back to word of mouth. And whether that's you're going to be an online trainer or you're going to be away from footfall and you're going to be going to people, the first thing that you've got to do is get those raving pro you fans. Once you've got those, that's proven in many ways that what you do works. It's like those early adopters. Getting those people through the door to your personal training business is critical, because there will be hundreds of other people, more than that, waiting to hear from those early adopters. But they're not the type of individual who's going to take that first step. But once the early adopter does, the person who's prepared to experiment and is more of a risk taker and more keen on being the first to experience a new service, goes back and says, "Hey guys, this is awesome. You really need to go here," or have this guy come to you, or get on the phone to them, or get on Skype to them. Then there's exponentially the audience is going to grow. I don't know of anything better than that in this industry. You can try all the other stuff as well. Do have a marketing strategy, perhaps do have an advertising strategy that you use, maybe Google ads, maybe Facebook ads, to just get the ball rolling a bit. But I would certainly from a realistic business perspective, I would always be very aware of my spend on advertising, because that can easily run away. And one thing I found as a personal trainer, there is no shortage of people ready to offer you advertising space. And when you first become a personal trainer, you may kind of feel special about it. You'll get, all these local newspapers and magazines and websites saying, oh, we see you're a personal trainer and we've got this special page, court page ad that we want to give to you. And you would find that very quickly your budget could be spent. And actually these things are not great ways of drawing many people to your business. It's a great way of funding somebody else's magazine or whatever else it may be. So in that case, one thing I did as a personal trainer was one of the very first things I did, I think it was back in 2000, is I simply went, and this is sort of pre the internet being quite as critical as it is now, I went and knocked on every local newspaper door and said, I want to write a fitness column for you. And I got turned down by, this was newspapers and magazines, I think I got turned down by about 10, 15 people saying, well, who are you? Why should we have you right now? I was somebody literally back in 99 stepping into this field. And so I had no background. So when people say, well, who are you to write this? I didn't really have an answer for them. But I found made a lovely connection with somebody at a particular paper. And I started writing for that newspaper. Later on, they themselves were asked to edit a magazine. When that happened, I went with them and wrote a fitness column for the magazine as well. So I'd knock on some doors in that respect, rather than just looking to pay for advertising. I would also, or maybe even more specifically, look for outlets for your writing or your video, or whatever you're confident. If you're confident in audio, if you're confident in video, if you're confident in still photography in terms of showing clients or whatever, or if you're confident in the written word, find ways of getting it out there so that people are exposed to it, more people are exposed to it. And that I suppose that would be the other place I would focus my attention. So the two places I would focus my main attention is on any people who do come through my door, my initial clients. I want to focus on making them a success story for themselves primarily, but also for me from a business perspective as well. And then on the other side, I would be looking to get my knowledge, my information out there through as many channels as I can, through whatever medium I am comfortable expressing myself and this type of exercise in.
And also, just to add to that, that's really good what you said about submitting articles to some of those other, newspapers and magazines. But obviously today, everything's a blog, right? Pretty much, blogs dominate the web. So an equivalent to that in a digital format would be like guest blogging. So
absolutely, yeah.
Write a guest blog on someone's site, adding value to their readership, and then I don't know, how successful would that be in terms of actually driving clients? Do you think, as long as you target the right places, that can work quite well? Yeah. I think if anybody wants to write a guest blog for HITuni and they've got something interesting to say, I'd be very interested in seeing what there is, Lawrence. So do I think? Yes, I do. I think if you've got something to say and you've got an interesting perspective, because what it's doing is raising people's awareness of you. And I'm not saying, necessarily it's going to have an impact overnight. And, like we started off talking about an hour ago, we love this stuff to be overnight, but more often than not, it's a drip, 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 planting seeds here, planting seeds there effect that you go back and you water, you nourish, and in time, these things can grow into trees. So it's about doing that, putting it out there, put yourself out there. If you've written a guest blog on somebody else's site, if you've got your own blog, if you've got your own website with a blog element to it, and you can put stuff up there, it's putting on your Facebook page, on your group page, whatever it is. It's like you're putting droplets of information that lead back to your service out there, and in time, you might not know which of those is going to be successful, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if, you put 25 guest blogs out there and one of them draws you traffic. It might have taken you 24
to get to the 25th one, but draws you the traffic. And that's what's important. Is, a lot of this stuff is about the journey, not having the destination in mind, but is about the journey and enjoying, doing that stuff as you go along. And I think the other thing is doing it well. I think sometimes people at the very start can be a little bit quick or eager to sort of just do something hoping for an instant result. And I think it's way better to just sort of, if you're going to write something, enjoy that process of writing something passionate, so that it's coming from you. So it's got a voice that's your voice. Then I think people will more likely resonate. And the type of people who are going to be a good match as a client for you as a trainer, that's going to resonate. That voice is going to resonate well for them. So I think that's a huge benefit, and it might take you some time, and you might write some ones which go nowhere, in terms of people drawing people back to you, or it might be one that doesn't do anything for 6 months, and then suddenly it gets linked somewhere. And these things work. These things just work.
Yeah, I agree, and I guess a little tip when it comes to journalism that I've discovered is start small. Like, if you're just starting out and you have 0 users or 0 traffic or whatever, it might be hard for you to get a blog post on the Huffington Post or on somewhere that's, like a big brand name. So start off going to smaller outlets and smaller blogs. And then you can leverage that in the future. So at the start, I was getting featured on, some smaller sites, some more niche sites. And then that's given me the leverage to get on bigger sites. The Huffington Post was a bit fortunate because I had a friend who wrote for them, so that's helpful. But I'm currently talking to some very well-known digital media outlets who, when I approached them, my pitch was like, I've been featured in X, Y, and Z. I've been featured here, here, and here. Like, I'm using everything I can to show them, like, this is, to give them social proof. So that they take a chance on me, Yeah. So no, I completely agree. And I encourage people to start small and work their way up. Obviously, not to discourage them to approach the big names immediately, but just perhaps consider that as part of your strategy. I want to talk about we talked about this a little bit before, but obviously this is a take 2. But I want to make sure we cover this. There's a lot of online business opportunity in high intensity training. I recently had Pete Sisko on the show, who's been very, very successful generating an online income selling strength training products and services, which has enabled him to have quite an amazing lifestyle. And I know there's a lot of people out there, a lot of listeners who are passionate about high intensity training, but they also have a taste for entrepreneurship. And I don't think obviously the obvious startup is a personal training studio or service, but there are other opportunities, such as a YouTube channel or a blog or selling online courses or fill in the blank. So do you want to talk about, how do you think about that in terms of, when you talk to people who are passionate about this and what online business opportunities there are, what do you think people have available to them and how do you think about that?
I think there's a lot of availability. And because there are so many different channels now, from Instagram to Facebook to Snapchat to whatever the latest is. And so a question would be, where do you start? And I would say the best place to start is whatever draws you. Initially, whatever feels right for your message. So if YouTube, obviously do a little bit of research. If YouTube feels right, or you digest a lot of YouTube videos yourself, so that's obviously a medium that you enjoy as somebody receiving it, that may mean that you're going to enjoy the process of creating stuff for YouTube. If you enjoy, doing really cool shots of your abs, maybe Instagram would be the place for you to start out and build up an awareness of you as a brand on Instagram. So I think it's finding a channel that you're, perhaps not confident in start off with, but that you enjoy consuming. If you enjoy consuming, I think it gives you a clue that you might well enjoy delivering information via that medium. You're then probably going to discover how much more work it is to create something for that medium than it is to consume it. But that's a part of the process, and we talked about start slowly and build it up. And I think the key thing is, if you enjoy it, that's the key. If you enjoy creating for that medium, that's the key. It's like, for me, I really enjoy the written word. I also really enjoy doing video stuff, but I don't particularly enjoy editing video. So also, if that would apply to you, you might need to farm out. And I know this is stuff you do for the audio stuff as well, as your farm out elements of what you do. It's like, if there are bits where you come unstuck, or there are bits that you're not technically capable of now and don't have the time, desire, or motivation to get technically good at, farm it out to somebody who is. And there are plenty of people out there who can provide a service, and if you're starting off small, you can probably source somebody who can provide it relatively inexpensively to start out with. Yeah. So don't let that, if that's something you're going to do, don't let that stuff be a barrier to entry. Find a way around it, because there will be a way around it. There are loads of people doing this stuff successfully. Not everybody's a genius at editing video, and yet they do great YouTube videos. That's the kind of thing I would suggest to do. And I'm sure, I need to go and have a chat and find out what the latest thing the kids are using now. That's the next social media branch that's going to take off. There's always, this is something which is a really cool world, because there's always going to be something new. And I think sometimes some people sort of fear that, or it's like, oh my God, I feel uncomfortable. No, these are just opportunities. These new avenues, these new delivery mechanisms. And maybe they're ones for you, maybe they're not. But, have your feelers out there, explore them. Are they going to be worthwhile engaging in? Do they work for you? Do they work for your audience? Does your audience hang out at the other end of those places? If your target audience doesn't, then there's no point in you investing a lot of time in that channel. So it's an awareness of what you would enjoy doing and where the audience for the service you're providing is. And I think if you have those two sides of the scale balanced up, you are going to be in a pretty good place.
Yeah, I completely agree. It is about finding the right medium, because at the end of the day, it is all about passion and interest. If you can't sustain it, it's not going to work. And for the same reason, if you're starting a blog, for instance, I think you should try and have a very small quota to begin with, like one blog post a week or one a month or whatever, just to comply over a longer period of time. So, for example, I've just started a second podcast with a friend of mine. And the reason we wanted to do this is we both have our own podcasts, but there's a lot of stuff we like talking about which we don't have on our own podcasts, like about business or philosophy and other things. So we decided that we would start this podcast. We'd do it weekly. We'd spend half an hour on a Sunday recording it. And we deliberately made it incredibly low labor. So we're not going to have a website. We're not going to even have a Facebook page or anything. It's just, we're just going to probably share it on our own socials, maybe to our email lists, and just to get some awareness, but then just upload it straight to Libsyn, which is a hosting platform, and then it gets out to iTunes. And that's literally all we're going to do. Maybe a little bit of artwork, just so we have a logo, so that when we launch, we got a good chance of being on the new and noteworthy in iTunes. But literally, we have deliberately kept it so basic, because he's incredibly busy, probably busier than I am. So in order for us to actually comply with it and do it, we've made it really simple, and we've only committed to 6 episodes. And we're going to see how we feel after 6. If no one likes it or we don't want to do it anymore, we'll just stop.
That sounds awesome. It sounds like a lot of fun. Like you're playing around with it and enjoying the process.
Yeah, exactly. You just kind of playing around with the creative. It is a lot of fun. So I want to. How much time do you have, Simon? I'm aware.
I have 10, 12 minutes available left. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Couple of questions about high intensity training. I know everyone's eager to figure out how they can get ripped abs like Simon Shawcross. So,
or Lawrence Neal, I've seen those photos of you recently.
Well, thank you. So last time we spoke, I think you were very keen on the split routines. Obviously, things are slightly different now in that you're just trying to fit it in where you can. But talk to me about, do you still think there's value in split routines versus full body workouts? How do you think about that stuff?
I do. And I've been thinking about it more since the last time you and me spoke. And one of the things that you may discover, or listeners may discover, is that when you have a child who goes to nursery for the first time around a year old, you're going to be getting ill. They're going to be bringing stuff back from the nursery that's going to put you under the weather way more often than I'd expected or was prepared for. And this is an area where I found a split routine to be a little bit beneficial, certainly for me in my case, is that I don't want to do a full body routine an hour or so before I go and pick up my daughter from nursery and have her coming back. Bless her, she's boosting her immune system. This is awesome. I was speaking to a doctor about it the other day. The more of this stuff they get at this young age, it improves their immune function over the long term. And apparently, the more that a child is exposed to this kind of stuff prior to the age of 2.5, the stronger their immune system is likely to be over the long term of their entire life. So, but if you don't get them exposed to this stuff before 2.5, apparently the benefit isn't there over the long term. So it's actually cool that it happens. But bringing this back to high intensity training, what I found was, I'd be picking up colds from her, stomach bugs from her, bits and pieces. So what I did during that phase, and it happened really the first 3 months she started nursery, when, you're going from a fresh immune system that hasn't really been taxed before to being exposed to this stuff all the time. And then me kind of being exposed to it, perhaps working hard as well, and my immunity not being as good as it could be at a particular time made me pick it up from her too. So what I found was like doing a sort of a split routine, maybe a three-way split, didn't take as much out of me physically and didn't leave me feeling that sort of like overly tired from the workout.
Carpet time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like avoiding that completely, really avoiding that. And I have just found that in those circumstances, I found it wasn't, pushing me to the edge. So I would say, like, where I would think a split routine could be of benefit is, say, like somebody is, got a chronic illness, or they're being exposed to, they've got a suppressed immune system, severe long-term chronic illness, and you don't want them to have that whole body systemic hit impact in one session. And if it's somebody you need to treat with kid gloves a little bit more, I would say that could be a point where a split routine could be beneficial. And so if I was to start working with, so let's take somebody who's going through chemo, or they've got a very compromised immune system for whatever reason, I would probably start off aiming to do full body, but holding back from failure, going to maybe a 9 out of 10. Maybe even a bit less than that if they're in the midst of their chemo, and just seeing what their response to exercise is like. If it's good, great, let's get the intensity up there over a period of weeks. If they're still responding great, fantastic. If they can't, then I would look at holding them back a little bit from failure and maybe splitting up routine as needed. So yeah, I do think there are circumstances, but I think for the vast majority of individuals, a full body workout once or twice a week is the place to be in most circumstances. And I certainly wouldn't be rushing to do a split. It would sort of be something that I would use in exceptional circumstances if somebody struggles with recovery. That really would be the purpose behind it from my perspective.
So long as one can provide the mental momentum. Sorry, let me rephrase that. So long as mental momentum is avoided and turnarounds are controlled, does rep speed really matter?
So long as
mental momentum is avoided and
what's mental momentum?
I don't know. I think that's my typo. Just let's just say momentum.
Okay. Yeah.
and turnarounds are controlled. Does rep speed really matter?
My answer to that is no. I don't think so. I think if you've eliminated momentum and you are genuinely in control of the turnaround. So, if you're coming down to touch a weight stack or even hover just above and turn, although I do like to touch the weight stack just to glance it, because then I know my depth is the same every time. And my other turnaround is like really controlled. No, I don't think speed or tempo matters at all then, because you are controlling everything that needs to be controlled. You're not putting the joints at risk, so long as you're going for a biomechanically correct movement. No, then I think that you're controlling the elements that need to be controlled, and your speed of movement depends then on the stroke of the exercise.
Yeah, well said. There was a question submitted on the Body by Science group about that, and some chat was asking about cadence recommendations, and I basically said that. I said it really doesn't matter so long as you're achieving those things. But I understand why people want just a kind of an idea as to what the cadence might be, so they can just see what that looks like. If you just say that, or what you just said to someone who really isn't.
Yeah, I think especially to beginners, like to have a benchmark.
A benchmark, right? Yeah,
absolutely. Then I think it's really important, because one thing many people don't get if they haven't been exposed to this type of exercise before is what slow genuinely is under load.
Yeah,
and what a controlled turnaround is like. That's alien to most people when they start training. So. Yeah, to give them a sense of what control is, a time guideline is critical. Yeah.
So that gets us to the end of the episode, Simon. So what's the best way for people to find out more about you?
To go to HITuni.com, where you can see all the latest blog posts that we're releasing to select a course you want to take. It's all there. If you want to get in touch with me directly, my email address is simon@HITuni. And, we've got our Twitter, our Facebook. So you can look at or get in touch through any of those mediums.
Awesome. And for everyone listening, for all of the show notes, bubble in my throat. For all of the show notes for this episode and all episodes, please go to corporatewarrior.org. And until next time, guys, thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed that. Before you head off, don't forget to head on over to HITuni.com to get your time-limited offer of 15% off any HITuni.com course you purchase by using the coupon code CW100. That's CW100. These are the best high-intensity training e-learning courses I've ever come across, which come highly recommended by Dr. Doug McGuff, Drew Bay, and Luke Carson, and will teach you everything you need to start your own successful high-intensity training business. This offer is only available for 1 week and ends on December the 7th. So head on over to HITuni.com now, select your course, and enter the coupon code CW100 for 15% discount now. This episode is brought to you by ARX, the most innovative, efficient, and effective all-in-one exercise machines I've ever seen. I was really impressed with my ARX workout. The intensity and adaptive resistance was unlike anything I've ever experienced. I love how the machine enables you to increase the negative load to fatigue target muscles more quickly, and I love how the workouts are effortlessly quantified. The software tracks maximum force output, rate of work, total amount of work done, and more in front of you on screen, allowing you to compete with your previous performance to give you and your clients real-time motivation. The ARX uses a computer-controlled motor to give you the exact amount of resistance your clients need 100% of the time. This means that the resistance can never become dangerous, is intuitive and simple to use, and can provide you with all of the results you and your clients are looking for in a fraction of the time. ARX is highly effective and efficient in delivering all of the benefits of exercise, including increased strength, muscle mass, cardiovascular conditioning, bone mineral density, and injury recovery. As well as being utilized by many high-intensity training trainers to deliver highly effective and efficient workouts to their clients, ARX comes highly recommended by world-class trainers and brands, including Bulletproof, Tony Robbins, and Ben Greenfield Fitness. To find out more about ARX and how you can get $1,000 off software licensing when you place an order, that's right guys, $1,000 off, please go to arxfit.com and mention Corporate Warrior in the How Did You Hear About Us field. So again, to get $1,000 off software licensing when you order, head on over to arxfit.com and enter Corporate Warrior in the How Did You Hear About Us field.